I never thought I'd be a prepper. Just a few months ago, I was a truck driver, spending long hours on the road, delivering goods to those who needed them. Life was simple, predictable. I woke up at dawn, loaded my rig, and hit the highway, listening to the radio as I drove. I enjoyed the solitude of the open road, the hum of the engine like a comforting lullaby. But that all changed the day the world crumbled. The day the outbreak began, I was hundreds of miles away from home, navigating the winding roads of a small town. I remember the radio crackling to life with urgent news reports something terrible was happening. A virus was spreading across the country, turning people into, well, I didn't want to think about what they were becoming. At first, I couldn't believe it. I thought it was just another sensational story spun by the media to boost ratings. But as I drove, the highways became eerily empty. The closer I got to home, the more the sense of dread grew. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach, an instinctual warning that things were about to change forever. The usual roadside diners and gas stations I frequented were shuttered, their neon signs flickering in the fading light. I remember pulling into the driveway and seeing Lisa standing at the door, her face pale and drawn, a look of panic etched in her features. "John, you're back," she exclaimed, rushing to embrace me. But her relief was short-lived. "You have to see this," she whispered, pulling me inside. Emma, our daughter, peeked out from behind her, wide-eyed and scared. "Dad, are we safe?" she asked, her small voice trembling. "For now," I replied, though I could feel the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. We had supplies, canned food, water, medical kits, but the sound of moans outside reminded us that safety was an illusion. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with fear. I had always taken pride in my ability to provide for my family, but now, I felt helpless. The radio became our lifeline, our only connection to the outside world. Every crackle filled us with both dread and a flicker of hope. The news reports were grim, detailing the rapid spread of the infection and the collapse of social order. One night, as we huddled together in the living room, the radio announced the first sightings of the infected in our town. "Stay indoors," the voice warned. "Do not engage with them." But how could we stay indoors when the world outside was unraveling? I watched Lisa's face, her expression shifting from fear to determination. "We need to prepare," she said, and I could see the resolve in her eyes. Together, we fortified our home, barricading doors and windows, creating a sanctuary from the chaos outside. Days turned into weeks, and we faced close calls. One night, the sound of shuffling outside sent chills down my spine. I crept to the window and peeked out, heart racing. There they were, grotesque figures with vacant eyes, drawn to the slightest noise. I turned to my family, fear gripping my heart. "Stay quiet. Stay inside." As the days passed, the tension grew. Emma would sometimes ask, "Dad, when can we go outside again?" Each time, my heart broke a little more. I wanted to tell her everything would be okay, but I couldn't promise that. The outside world, once familiar and comforting, was now a dark and dangerous place. Each day brought new challenges, and I could feel the weight of our situation pressing down on us like a heavy fog. I knew we needed more supplies, a realization that weighed heavily on my mind. The canned goods we had dwindled, and the thought of running out filled me with dread. One evening, I gathered the family around the table. "Listen, we need to talk about getting more supplies," I said, trying to mask the anxiety in my voice. Lisa frowned, her brow furrowing. "John, it's too dangerous out there. We can't risk it." I know, I replied, glancing at Emma, who was playing with her stuffed bear. But we can't survive on what we have forever. I'll be careful. I promise. After a tense discussion, Lisa reluctantly agreed, knowing I wouldn't be swayed. We planned a route to the nearest grocery store, marking potential dangers along the way. The thought of venturing outside, into the unknown, was terrifying, but we had no choice. The next morning, I donned my old work boots and grabbed a backpack. I felt a mix of determination and fear as I stepped outside. The silence was unnerving, the world had become a ghost town. I moved quickly, staying low and alert. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat, every sound made my heart race. Inside the store, the shelves were mostly bare, remnants of panic evident in the scattered goods. I grabbed what I could: canned food, bottled water, anything that would last. Suddenly, I heard a crash. I turned to see a horde of zombies stumbling through the broken entrance, their eyes vacant and hungry. Panic surged through me. I ducked behind a shelf, heart pounding as they shuffled closer. I held my breath, waiting for the right moment. When they paused, I bolted for the exit, adrenaline coursing through me. I burst into the night, sprinting back home, fear propelling me forward. When I finally made it back, I found Lisa and Emma huddled together, their eyes wide with relief. "You're safe," Lisa exclaimed, rushing to embrace me. But our moment of joy was short-lived. The radio crackled to life, a frantic voice breaking through the static. "We've found a cure," it said, but the hope was quickly overshadowed by warnings of gangs of survivors turning violent in their desperation. Days passed, and the sound of chaos grew closer. One evening, the radio broadcast warned of an impending attack. "They're coming for what you have," the voice warned. "Prepare to defend yourselves." I felt the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders. We fortified our home, barricading doors and windows. I could see the fear in Lisa's eyes, and Emma clung to her stuffed bear, her innocence slipping away. Then it happened. In the dead of night, the sound of shouting and gunfire filled the air. I looked at Lisa, who nodded, determination replacing fear. "They want what we have," I said, gripping my bat. "We won't let them take it." The door shook violently as they pounded against it. I glanced at my family, and we stood together, hearts racing. The first blow shattered the wood, and I swung the bat, adrenaline surging. The door burst open, and faces twisted in rage flooded into our home. I fought with everything I had, protecting my family as they tried to breach our sanctuary. Lisa grabbed a knife, and together we pushed back, fighting not just for survival, but for our very lives. Finally, we managed to drive them back, slamming the door shut once more, hearts pounding. We were battered but alive. As we caught our breath, the radio crackled again, a frantic voice breaking through the static. "We have more news about the cure," it said, but I couldn't focus on that. I looked at my family, the light of hope flickering within us. In that moment, I realized that survival wasn't just about supplies or barricades, it was about fighting for each other. We stood together, united against the darkness, and I knew that as long as we had each other, we could face whatever lay beyond the horizon. When I finally pulled into our driveway, the familiar sight of our home filled me with relief. But as I stepped out of the truck, that relief was quickly replaced by a knot of anxiety in my stomach. The air felt heavy, charged with an unsettling silence that seemed to envelop everything around me. I had expected to see Lisa and Emma waiting for me, their faces lit up with joy at my return. Instead, there was only stillness. As I walked toward the front door, I noticed the curtains were drawn tightly shut. I knocked gently, the sound echoing in the quiet. "Lisa. Emma." I called, my voice tinged with urgency. A moment later, the door creaked open, revealing Lisa's pale face, the worry etched into her features. "John," she whispered, pulling me inside quickly, as if afraid to let any outside air in. "You're back." "Yeah, I made it," I said, forcing a smile. But I could see the fear in her eyes, a fear that mirrored my own. "What's going on?" She glanced over her shoulder, ensuring no one was listening. "It's bad, John. Really bad." I followed her into the living room, where Emma was sitting on the floor, playing with her toys, but her cheerful demeanor felt forced. Her eyes darted to me, filled with a mixture of relief and confusion. "Daddy," she exclaimed, jumping up to run into my arms. I scooped her up, holding her tightly. "I missed you." "I missed you too, kiddo." "But what's happening out there?" I asked, setting her down gently. "People are getting sick," Lisa said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It started with reports on the news, but now it's here. People are turning into monsters." My heart sank. I had heard whispers of a strange illness while on the road, but I brushed it off as just another sensationalized story. "What do you mean, monsters?" "There are reports of people attacking each other," she continued, her voice trembling. "They're not themselves anymore. They're violent." Emma's small hand grasped my shirt, and I could feel her trembling against me. "Is it safe, Daddy?" she asked, her innocent voice breaking my heart. "For now," I replied, trying to sound reassuring. "We're safe here." But inside, I felt the walls closing in on us. The world outside had become a dangerous place, and our home, which had always been a sanctuary, now felt like a prison. I looked at Lisa, searching for answers. "What are we going to do?" I asked, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders. "We need to prepare," she said, her voice steadier now. "We've got supplies, and we can fortify the house. But we need to stay alert." As the days turned into weeks, the atmosphere in our home shifted dramatically. What had once been a place of laughter and love became a battleground against fear and uncertainty. We established a new routine, one built on vigilance and caution. Each day, I found myself checking the windows and doors, reinforcing our defenses. Lisa took charge of rationing our supplies, carefully calculating how long we could last. Emma, sensing the tension, became quieter. Her laughter fading as the reality of our new life weighed heavily on her small shoulders. "Can we go outside today, Dad?" she asked one afternoon, her voice barely a whisper. I knelt beside her, forcing a smile. "Not today, sweetheart. It's not safe yet." "But I want to play," she insisted, her eyes bright with longing. I know," I replied, feeling the ache in my heart. "We'll find a way to play inside, okay? We can build a fort together." As I set up blankets and cushions in the living room, I could see the flicker of hope return to her eyes. We played together, but my mind was elsewhere, constantly scanning the windows for any sign of danger. Lisa watched us from the kitchen, her expression a mix of gratitude and sorrow. "You're doing great with her," she said softly. "But we need to talk about what happens if this continues." I nodded, knowing she was right. We had to be prepared for anything. One night, as we huddled together in the living room, the radio became our only connection to the outside world. It crackled to life, the voice of the broadcaster breaking through the static. "Attention, citizens. The situation is worsening. The infected are becoming increasingly aggressive. Stay indoors and avoid contact with anyone who shows signs of illness." The weight of those words hung in the air, a grim reminder of the reality we faced. I turned to Lisa, and we exchanged worried glances. "We can't let fear take over," she said, her voice steadier than I felt. "We'll get through this together." Despite our efforts to maintain some semblance of normalcy, the tension continued to build. One night, as we settled into bed, I heard a low, guttural moan from outside. My heart raced as I nudged Lisa awake. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my voice tight with anxiety. "Hear what?" she murmured, still half asleep. "The noise. It sounded like something." We lay in silence, straining to listen. The moan came again, followed by a shuffling sound. I felt the cold grip of fear settle in my stomach. I slipped out of bed, moving cautiously toward the window. Peering through the curtains, I saw a figure stumbling down the street, its movements jerky and unnatural. It was pale, its clothes tattered and stained. My breath caught in my throat as I realized what it was: a zombie. "John." Lisa's voice was barely above a whisper, and I could see her standing behind me, wide-eyed. "Stay back," I instructed, my heart pounding. "We need to be quiet." The figure drew closer, and I could see its vacant eyes, the way it moved with a mindless hunger. I turned back to Lisa, my voice urgent. "We need to defend ourselves. Get the kitchen knives." She nodded, her expression shifting from fear to determination. I could see the strength in her eyes as she quickly moved to grab what we would need. Emma stirred in her sleep, and I rushed to her side, gently shaking her awake. "Sweetheart, you need to stay quiet, okay? We have to be very still." She nodded, her eyes still heavy with sleep, but I could see the confusion in her expression. As Lisa returned with the knives, I felt a surge of adrenaline. "If it gets in, we fight," I said, gripping the bat I had kept close. The zombie was now at our front porch, scratching at the door. The sound sent chills down my spine. "It's trying to get in," Lisa whispered, her voice trembling. "Stay behind me," I instructed, positioning myself between the door and my family. The scratching grew louder. More frantic. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, the instinct to protect my family overriding every other thought. The door shook violently as the creature pushed against it. "Get ready!" I shouted, my grip tightening on the bat. With one final shove, the door burst open, revealing the grotesque figure. I swung the bat with all my might, connecting hard with its head. The creature stumbled back, a low growl escaping its lips. "John!" Lisa screamed, brandishing her knife, ready to join the fight. Together, we pushed back against the creature, fear and adrenaline fueling our every move. I swung again, and the zombie fell to the ground, motionless. Breathing heavily, I turned to Lisa, who was still gripping the knife tightly. "Is it over?" she asked, her voice shaky. "I think so," I replied, though my heart was still racing. Emma stood wide-eyed in the corner, clutching her stuffed bear. "What was that?" she asked, her voice small. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe," I said, kneeling beside her. "We took care of it." But as I looked at the lifeless body on the floor, I realized that this was only the beginning. Our lives had changed forever, and we were now living in a world where danger lurked just outside our door. In the days that followed, the radio became our lifeline, our only connection to the outside world. Every evening, we would gather in the living room, huddled together on the couch, straining to catch every word from the crackling speaker. "Attention, citizens," the voice would say, filled with a mix of urgency and despair. "The outbreak is spreading. Reports of the infected are increasing. Please stay indoors and avoid contact." The sound of the radio filled the silence in our home, a constant reminder of the chaos that lay outside. Each announcement carried with it a weight of dread, and we listened closely, trying to gauge the severity of the situation. One evening, as the radio crackled to life, the announcer's tone shifted. "We are receiving reports of survivor groups forming in various locations. If you are safe, consider joining them. They may provide protection and resources." I turned to Lisa, my heart racing. "What do you think? Should we look for others?" She shook her head, her eyes filled with concern. "It's too risky right now. We don't know who we can trust." "Maybe it's our best chance," I replied, feeling the pull of hope. "If there are others out there, we shouldn't isolate ourselves." Emma spoke up, her small voice cutting through our debate. "I don't want to leave home, Daddy." I knelt next to her, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I know, sweetheart. But we need to be safe. If we can find others, it might help us." As the days turned into a blur of fear and uncertainty, the radio continued to provide updates. Each announcement was a lifeline, but it also deepened our anxiety. We would listen intently, holding our breath as the announcer detailed the spread of the infection and the growing number of attacks. "Stay vigilant," the voice warned. "The infected are becoming more aggressive. Protect your homes and your loved ones." I could feel the weight of those words pressing down on me. Our home had always been a sanctuary, but now it felt like a ticking time bomb. Each night brought with it the uncertainty of what the dawn would bring. As I lay in bed, listening to the soft breaths of my family beside me, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on borrowed time. The world outside was changing rapidly, and we had to adapt if we wanted to survive. The radio became more than just a source of information, it was a reflection of our reality. It echoed our fears, our hopes, and our desperate attempts to hold on to what little normalcy remained. We clung to it, praying for news of a cure, praying for a glimmer of hope in a world that had turned dark. With each passing day, I felt the weight of our new reality settle deeper within me. We were no longer just a family living in a quiet neighborhood, we were survivors, fighting against the tide of chaos that threatened to engulf us. As the sun set each evening, we would gather around the radio, our makeshift lifeline, and listen intently. And each time the announcer's voice crackled to life, it reminded us that we were not alone in this fight. We were in this together, and as long as we had each other, we would face whatever lay ahead. The world outside may have changed, but within our home, we would continue to fight, adapt, and hold on to hope. As the days turned into weeks, the reality of our situation sank deeper into my bones. We had supplies, but they were dwindling fast. The canned goods that once filled our pantry were now reduced to a few sad remnants. I knew we had to venture out for more supplies, but the thought filled me with dread. Each time I prepared for a supply run, my heart raced with a mix of determination and fear. The world outside our fortified walls had become a desolate landscape, a far cry from the bustling neighborhood I once knew. The streets were eerily quiet, with only the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant moan of the infected breaking the silence. I would gather my gear, an old backpack, a flashlight, and whatever weapons I could find. The baseball bat felt heavy in my hands, a reassuring weight that reminded me of my purpose. I glanced at Lisa and Emma, who watched me with worried expressions. "Be careful, John," Lisa said, her voice laced with concern. "We can't afford to lose you." "I'll be quick," I promised, forcing a smile. "I'll be back before you know it." As I stepped outside, the air felt thick with tension. I moved quickly down the driveway, my senses heightened. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat, every sound made my heart race. I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay focused. The neighborhood was unrecognizable. Abandoned cars lined the streets, their windows shattered and doors ajar. The once vibrant lawns were overgrown, a testament to the chaos that had erupted. I navigated my way through the wreckage, keeping to the shadows, my heart pounding in my chest. The grocery store was only a few blocks away, but every step felt like a leap into the unknown. As I approached, the sight of the store sent a jolt of anxiety through me. The entrance was partially blocked by fallen debris, a grim reminder of the panic that had unfolded. I crept inside, the familiar scent of food now tinged with decay. The shelves were mostly bare, remnants of what had once been a thriving store. I quickly filled my backpack with whatever I could find: canned food, bottled water, and first aid supplies. But as I turned to leave, I heard a low growl coming from the back of the store. My heart dropped as I realized I wasn't alone. I ducked behind a shelf, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The growl grew louder, followed by the unmistakable sound of shuffling feet. I peered around the corner, my breath hitching in my throat as I saw a figure stumbling into view, one of the infected. Its clothes were torn, and its skin was a sickly shade of gray. The vacant stare of its eyes sent chills down my spine. I held my breath, waiting for the right moment to make my escape. The creature moved closer, and I could see the decay of its flesh, the grotesque reality of what had become of humanity. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, but I couldn't let fear take control. I had to get back to my family. Just as it paused, I bolted for the exit, adrenaline surging through my veins. I sprinted through the aisles, dodging debris and trying to keep my footsteps silent. My heart raced as I reached the door, the sound of shuffling footsteps echoing behind me. I burst outside, slamming the door behind me. The fresh air hit me like a wave, but I couldn't let my guard down. I glanced back, and my heart dropped as I saw the figure stumbling out of the store, drawn to the sound of my escape. Go, go, go. I urged myself, sprinting back home as fast as I could. Each footfall felt like thunder, a loud reminder of the danger that lurked behind me. I could hear the creature growling, its footsteps gaining on me. With every ounce of strength I had, I raced toward our house, the familiar sight of our fortified walls giving me a flicker of hope. I reached the front door just in time, slamming it shut and locking it behind me, breathless and trembling. "John!" Lisa exclaimed, her eyes wide with fear. "What happened?" "I saw one," I panted, trying to catch my breath. "It was right there." Emma peered around the corner, her small face pale. "Are you okay, Daddy?" "I'm fine," I assured her, though the tremor in my voice betrayed my fear. "But we need to be careful. They're getting closer." As the days wore on, the emotional toll of our new reality began to weigh heavily on us. Lisa and I tried to maintain a sense of normalcy for Emma, but the fear was palpable. Emma's laughter, once a constant in our home, had faded into a hesitant silence. One evening, after another tense day, I found Emma sitting alone in her room, her toys scattered around her but untouched. I sat down beside her, feeling the weight of her sadness. "Hey, kiddo, what's wrong?" "I miss my friends," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to play outside." I felt my heart ache at her words. "I know, sweetheart. I miss those days too. But we have to stay safe right now." "Will we ever go back outside?" she asked, her eyes filled with longing. I took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "One day, I promise. We just need to be patient." As I held her close, I could feel the weight of the world pressing down on us. Lisa appeared in the doorway, her expression a mix of sadness and determination. "I'm making dinner," she said softly. "Do you want to help me?" Emma perked up at the suggestion. "Can I, Dad?" "Of course," I replied, grateful for the distraction. In the kitchen, we worked together, chopping vegetables and stirring pots. As we cooked, I could see the tension in Lisa's shoulders slowly easing. We shared stories, reminiscing about the past and laughing over Emma's silly antics. But even as we bonded, the underlying fear lingered. At night, when the darkness enveloped us, I would lie awake, listening to the sounds outside. Every crack and creak sent my heart racing. And I could see the shadows of fear creeping into Lisa's eyes as well. One night, as we sat together in the living room, the radio crackled to life. "Attention, citizens. The infected are becoming increasingly aggressive. We advise all survivors to remain indoors and fortify their homes." The voice sent shivers down my spine. I glanced at Lisa, who was holding Emma close, her expression filled with worry. "What if they come here?" she whispered. I placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll be ready. We have each other, and that's what matters." As the days turned into a blur of fear and uncertainty, I knew that our family bond was our greatest strength. We leaned on each other, supporting one another through the darkness that threatened to consume us. Days turned into a cycle of supply runs and tense nights, each outing more dangerous than the last. Each time I prepared to leave, I felt a knot of anxiety forming in my stomach. My mind raced with possibilities. What if I encountered more zombies? What if I didn't make it back? Despite my fears, I knew I had to be the one to venture out for supplies. We couldn't rely on luck forever. One morning, I gathered my gear again, determined to be quick and efficient. "Be careful," Lisa said, her voice steady but her eyes betraying her worry. "Remember what happened last time." "I will," I promised, forcing a confident smile. "I'll be in and out." As I stepped outside, the familiar weight of apprehension settled over me. The streets were still, the silence unnerving. I moved cautiously, keeping to the shadows, my senses heightened. The grocery store loomed ahead, its entrance partially blocked by debris. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. I slipped inside, scanning the dimly lit aisles. The shelves were mostly bare, but I quickly filled my backpack with whatever I could find. Suddenly, a sudden noise shattered the stillness. I froze, heart pounding in my chest. From the back of the store, I heard the unmistakable sound of growling. My blood ran cold as I realized I wasn't alone. I ducked behind a shelf, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The growling grew louder, followed by the sound of shuffling feet. I peered around the corner, my heart racing as I saw a zombie stumbling into view. With every ounce of restraint, I held my breath, watching as it moved closer. Its vacant eyes and decayed flesh filled me with dread. I had to escape before it noticed me. Just as it paused, I bolted for the exit, adrenaline surging through me. I sprinted through the aisles, dodging debris and trying to keep my footsteps silent. My heart raced as I reached the door, the sound of shuffling footsteps echoing behind me. I burst outside, slamming the door behind me. The fresh air hit me like a wave, but I couldn't let my guard down. I glanced back, and my heart dropped as I saw the figure stumbling out of the store, drawn to the sound of my escape. Go, go, go. I urged myself, sprinting back home as fast as I could. Each footfall felt like thunder, a loud reminder of the danger that lurked behind me. I could hear the creature growling, its footsteps gaining on me. With every ounce of strength I had, I raced toward our house, the familiar sight of our fortified walls giving me a flicker of hope. I reached the front door just in time, slamming it shut and locking it behind me, breathless and trembling. "John!" Lisa exclaimed, her eyes wide with fear. "What happened?" "I saw one," I panted, trying to catch my breath. "It was right there." Emma peered around the corner, her small face pale. "Are you okay, Daddy?" "I'm fine," I assured her, though the tremor in my voice betrayed my fear. "But we need to be careful. They're getting closer." As the days dragged on, the emotional toll of our new reality became increasingly evident. Lisa and I tried to maintain a sense of normalcy for Emma, but the weight of fear loomed over us like a storm cloud. One night, as we sat together in the living room, I noticed Lisa staring at the radio, her expression distant. "What are you thinking about?" I asked gently. "I don't know," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just keep wondering how long this will last." I nodded, understanding her concern. "We'll get through this," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "We have each other." Emma, sensing the tension, chimed in. "Can we play a game?" she asked, her eyes bright with hope. "Sure, sweetheart," I said, eager to lift the mood. "What do you want to play?" We pulled out a board game from the shelf, and as we settled down together, the familiar sounds of laughter began to fill the room. For a brief moment, we escaped the reality of our situation, lost in the joy of being a family. But even as we played, I could feel the weight of the world pressing down on us. Each time I glanced at the windows, I was reminded of the danger that lurked just outside. As the night wore on, I noticed Lisa's expression shifting. She looked tired, the stress of our situation etched into her features. "I'll be right back," she said, standing up and heading to the kitchen. I followed her, concern etched on my face. "Are you okay?" "I just need a moment," she replied, her voice shaky. "This is so hard, John. I'm scared." I reached for her hand, squeezing it tightly. "I know. We're all scared. But we're in this together." As we stood in the dim light of the kitchen, I could see the tears welling in her eyes. "I just want things to go back to normal," she said, her voice breaking. "I want that too," I said softly. "But we'll find a way. We have to keep pushing forward." In that moment, we leaned into each other, finding solace in our shared fears. The bond between us grew stronger, a lifeline in the midst of chaos. As the weeks dragged on, the tension in our home reached a breaking point. The fear of the outside world began to seep into our daily lives, and I could see it reflected in Emma's once bright eyes. One evening, after another tense day, I found Emma sitting alone in her room, her toys scattered around her but untouched. I sat down beside her, feeling the weight of her sadness. "Hey, kiddo," What's wrong? I miss my friends, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I want to play outside. I felt my heart ache at her words. I know, sweetheart. I miss those days too. But we have to stay safe right now. Will we ever go back outside? She asked, her eyes filled with longing. I took a deep breath, searching for the right words. One day, I promise. We just need to be patient. As I held her close, I could feel the weight of the world pressing down on us. Lisa appeared in the doorway, her expression a mix of sadness and determination. I'm making dinner, she said softly. Do you want to help me? Emma perked up at the suggestion. Can I, Dad? Of course, I replied, grateful for the distraction. In the kitchen. We worked together, chopping vegetables and stirring pots. As we cooked, I could see the tension in Lisa's shoulders slowly easing. We shared stories, reminiscing about the past and laughing over Emma's silly antics. But even as we bonded, the underlying fear lingered. At night, when the darkness enveloped us, I would lie awake, listening to the sounds outside. Every crack and creak sent my heart racing, and I could see the shadows of fear creeping into Lisa's eyes as well. One night, while lying awake, I heard it again, the low growl coming from outside. My heart raced as I nudged Lisa awake. Did you hear that? I whispered. Not again, she murmured, groggy but alert. It's getting closer, I said, rising to my feet. I moved to the window, peering through the cracks in the boarded-up wood. The figure was stumbling down the street, its movements erratic and unnatural. My pulse quickened as I realized what it was. John, be careful, Lisa cautioned, her voice sharp with concern. I have to see how close it is, I replied, my heart pounding in my chest. I had to know what we were up against. As I watched, the creature drew nearer, its vacant eyes locked onto the house. I turned to Lisa, fear etched across my face. We need to be ready. The growl grew louder, and I could feel the tension mounting. Stay quiet, stay behind me, I instructed, gripping the bat tightly. The creature moved closer, its grotesque form illuminated by the dim streetlight. I could see the decay of its flesh, and my stomach churned at the sight. What had once been a person was now a shell of its former self. What are we going to do? Lisa whispered, her voice shaking. Just wait, I replied, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. If it gets in, we fight. The growl echoed outside, and I could feel the adrenaline surging through my veins. We were ready to defend our home, our sanctuary against the chaos that threatened to consume us. As the days turned into a blur of fear and uncertainty, I realized that our family bond was our greatest strength. We leaned on each other, supporting one another through the darkness that threatened to consume us. In those moments of struggle, I saw the resilience in Lisa and Emma. Together, we faced the unknown, navigating the dangers of a world that had become unrecognizable. And as long as we stood together, I knew we could face whatever lay ahead. As the days turned into weeks, the world outside our fortified walls became increasingly chaotic. The once familiar streets of our suburban neighborhood transformed into a haunting landscape, a stark reminder of the collapse of civilization. I often found myself standing by the window, gazing out at the desolation that had replaced the vibrant community we once knew. The remnants of our town lay scattered before me, overturned cars, shattered glass, and debris littering the streets. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional distant moan of the infected or the rustle of leaves in the wind. It felt like a ghost town, a place where life had been snuffed out, leaving only echoes of what once was. I could see the public park where Emma used to play, now overgrown and wild. The swings sway gently in the breeze, creaking like mournful ghosts. The sight filled me with a profound sense of loss. I longed for the days when laughter filled the air, when the sound of children playing brought joy to our lives. But those days were gone. The reality of our situation weighed heavily on my shoulders as I turned away from the window, trying to shake off the gloom that threatened to envelop me. I had to focus on the present, on protecting my family from the dangers that lurked just beyond our doorstep. The radio had become our lifeline, but it also served as a constant reminder of the dangers outside. Each evening, we would gather around it, listening intently to updates from the outside world. The voice of the announcer often crackled with urgency, detailing the worsening situation. "Attention, citizens," the voice warned one night, sending chills down my spine. "Survivor gangs are forming in the area. They are armed and becoming increasingly violent. If you encounter them, do not engage. Protect your homes at all costs." The words sent a wave of dread through me. I turned to Lisa, who sat beside me, her face pale. "What does this mean for us?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "It means we need to be prepared," I replied, trying to mask my own anxiety. "We can't let them catch us off guard." Over the next few days, the tension in our home grew. I spent hours fortifying our defenses, reinforcing the barricades on the doors and windows. I gathered supplies and weapons, determined to protect my family at any cost. "John, do you really think we can hold them off?" Lisa asked one evening as we worked together to secure the windows. I paused, looking into her eyes. "We have to believe we can. We're stronger together." But even as I spoke the words, doubt gnawed at my insides. The thought of facing armed gangs filled me with fear. What if we couldn't defend ourselves? What if they broke through our barriers? The questions haunted me, lurking in the back of my mind. As the days passed, the weight of our new reality began to take a toll on Lisa. I could see the strain etched into her features, the worry lines deepening around her eyes. One evening, after a particularly tense day, she sat at the kitchen table, staring blankly at the wall. "John," she said quietly, breaking the silence. "Do you ever wonder if this is all worth it?" I turned to her, surprised by her question. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she continued, her voice trembling, "this prepping lifestyle, it's consuming us. We're living in constant fear, and for what? To survive? What kind of life is this?" Her words struck a chord deep within me. I had always believed that being prepared was essential, that it was my responsibility to protect my family. But now, as I watched the toll it was taking on Lisa, I couldn't help but question my choices. "I just want things to go back to normal," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "I want to take Emma to the park, to have family dinners without looking over our shoulders. I want to feel safe again." I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. "I want that too," I said softly, reaching for her hand. "But we have to stay vigilant. We can't let our guard down." "We're living in a nightmare, John," she replied, her voice breaking. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this up." I squeezed her hand, trying to offer comfort. "We'll find a way. We always do." But deep down, I felt the cracks forming in our carefully constructed facade. The stress of our situation was becoming unbearable, and I feared that the weight of it would tear us apart. That night, as I lay in bed, I listened to the sounds outside, the distant echoes of chaos, the moans of the infected, and the occasional pop of gunfire. I couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom. The world outside was a battleground, and I was terrified of what lay ahead. I turned to Lisa, who was already asleep, her brow furrowed in worry. I wanted to reach out and comfort her, to assure her that everything would be okay, but the truth was, I didn't know if it would be. The next morning, I woke up early, determined to take action. I needed to do something to alleviate the tension in our home. I gathered my gear and prepared for another supply run, knowing that the world outside was fraught with danger. As I stepped outside, the air felt thick with tension. The streets were silent, but I knew that could change in an instant. I moved cautiously, keeping to the shadows, my heart racing with every sound. The grocery store was a few blocks away, but I felt every step weighed down by the uncertainty of what lay ahead. I knew I had to be quick, efficient, and above all, careful. As I approached the store, I took in the remnants of chaos that surrounded me. The once familiar landscape was now a haunting reminder of the world that had unraveled. Abandoned cars were scattered along the streets, their windows shattered and doors ajar. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as I navigated through the wreckage. Inside the store, the shelves were mostly bare, remnants of panic evident in the scattered goods. I quickly filled my backpack with whatever I could find: canned food, bottled water, and anything that might help us survive another few days. But as I turned to leave, I paused, my heart racing. A sound echoed from the back of the store, a low growl that sent chills down my spine. I ducked behind a shelf, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The growl grew louder, and I could hear the unmistakable sound of shuffling feet. I peered around the corner, my breath hitching in my throat as I saw a figure stumbling into view, one of the infected. I held my breath, waiting for the right moment to make my escape. Just as it paused, I bolted for the exit, adrenaline surging through me. I sprinted through the aisles, dodging debris and trying to keep my footsteps silent. My heart raced as I reached the door, the sound of shuffling footsteps echoing behind me. I burst outside, slamming the door behind me, the fresh air hitting me like a wave. But I couldn't let my guard down. I glanced back and saw the figure stumbling out of the store, drawn to the sound of my escape. Go, go, go. I urged myself, sprinting back home as fast as I could. Each footfall felt like thunder, a loud reminder of the danger that lurked behind me. I could hear the creature growling, its footsteps gaining on me. With every ounce of strength I had, I raced toward our house, the familiar sight of our fortified walls giving me a flicker of hope. I reached the front door just in time, slamming it shut and locking it behind me, breathless and trembling. "John!" Lisa exclaimed, her eyes wide with fear. "What happened?" "I saw one," I panted, trying to catch my breath. "It was right there." Emma peered around the corner, her small face pale. "Are you okay, Daddy?" "I'm fine," I assured her, though the tremor in my voice betrayed my fear. "But we need to be careful. They're getting closer." In the days that followed, the tension in our home continued to escalate. The radio reports became increasingly alarming, detailing the rise of violent survivor gangs that were wreaking havoc in nearby neighborhoods. "Attention, citizens," the voice crackled one evening. "Survivor gangs are targeting homes for supplies. If you hear gunfire, stay indoors and lock your doors." The reality of our situation settled heavily upon us. I could see the fear in Lisa's eyes as we gathered around the radio, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on us like a heavy fog. "What do we do if they come here?" she asked, her voice shaking. We prepare, I replied firmly. We'll fortify the house and be ready to defend ourselves. But even as I spoke the words, doubt gnawed at my insides. What if we couldn't hold them off? What if they broke through our barriers? The questions haunted me, lurking in the back of my mind. That night, as I lay in bed, I could hear the distant sounds of chaos echoing through the darkness. I felt a growing sense of despair, a feeling that we were running out of time. The world outside was descending into madness, and I had to find a way to protect my family. As the days stretched on, the emotional toll became unbearable. Lisa's worry deepened, and I could see the strain etched into her features. One evening, she confronted me, her voice filled with frustration. "John, this isn't sustainable," she exclaimed, tears welling in her eyes. "We can't keep living in fear like this. It's consuming us." I felt a surge of frustration. "What do you want me to do, Lisa? Just give up?" "I'm trying to protect us." "I know, but at what cost?" she replied, her voice breaking. "This prepping lifestyle is tearing us apart. I just want to feel safe again." Her words struck a chord deep within me. I had always believed that being prepared was essential, that it was my responsibility to protect my family. But now, as I watched the toll it was taking on Lisa, I couldn't help but question my choices. "I want that too," I said softly, reaching for her hand. "But we have to stay vigilant. We can't let our guard down." As the tension in our home reached a breaking point, I realized that the weight of our situation was becoming too much to bear. The fear, the uncertainty, and the constant threat of danger were taking their toll on all of us. In the midst of the chaos, we had to find a way to navigate the dangers that lay ahead. The world outside was a battleground, and we were in the fight of our lives. As I looked at my family, I realized that our bond was our greatest strength. Together, we would face the unknown, supporting one another through the darkness. And as long as we stood together, I knew we could weather any storm that came our way. With renewed determination, I resolved to do whatever it took to protect my family, to keep them safe in a world that had turned dark and dangerous. The struggle was far from over, but we would face it together, united against the chaos that threatened to consume us. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across our living room. The atmosphere was thick with tension as we settled in for another night of uncertainty. We had spent the day reinforcing our defenses, but the anxiety never fully left us. As we gathered around the radio, the crackling voice of the announcer filled the room. "Attention, citizens. Reports indicate an increase in violent survivor attacks. Stay vigilant and protect your homes." I glanced at Lisa, who sat on the edge of the couch, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Emma was nestled between us, her small body curled up with her stuffed bear, blissfully unaware of the weight of our reality. "Dad, can we play a game?" Emma asked, her voice breaking the heavy silence. "Sure, sweetheart," I replied, forcing a smile. "Let's play something fun." But just as we were about to pull out a board game, a loud crash echoed from outside, followed by the sound of shouting. My heart dropped into my stomach, and instinct kicked in. "Everyone, stay quiet," I hissed, my voice low but urgent. I motioned for Lisa and Emma to stay still as I moved toward the window, peering through the cracks in the boards. What I saw made my blood run cold. A group of desperate survivors, at least 5 of them, were trying to break into our neighbor's house. They were shouting and pushing against the door, their faces twisted with rage and desperation. "John, what's happening?" Lisa whispered, her voice trembling. "There are people outside," I replied, my heart racing. "They're trying to get in." Before I could catch my breath, I heard the unmistakable sound of our own door being rattled. Panic surged through me. "They're here!" I shouted, adrenaline flooding my system. "Get ready!" The door shook violently as the group attempted to break in. I could hear their shouts growing louder, and my heart raced as I grabbed the baseball bat, feeling its familiar weight in my hands. "Stay behind me," I instructed, positioning myself in front of Lisa and Emma. "Whatever happens, don't let them get in." The door splintered under the force of their assault, and I felt a surge of fear. We had prepared for this moment, but nothing could fully prepare me for the reality of what lay ahead. With one final shove, the door burst open, and the group flooded in, faces twisted in anger and desperation. "Get them," one of them shouted, and I felt a chill run down my spine. I swung the bat with all my might, connecting with the first intruder's shoulder. He stumbled back, cursing, and I could see the shock in his eyes. But there was no time to celebrate. More were coming. "Lisa, grab the knife!" I yelled, my voice hoarse with urgency. She sprang into action, brandishing the kitchen knife with determination. I could see the fear in her eyes, but she stood her ground, ready to fight. We moved like a well-rehearsed team, every instinct honed by the fear that had settled over us in the past weeks. I swung the bat again, knocking another attacker to the ground, but the others pressed forward, desperation fueling their every move. "Emma, stay back!" I shouted, my heart racing as I fought to keep the intruders at bay. I could see her huddled in the corner, her wide eyes filled with terror. "Dad," she cried, her voice breaking. "Stay quiet. We'll protect you," I shouted, adrenaline surging through me. The room erupted into chaos. The sound of shouts and grunts filled the air, the smell of sweat and fear overwhelming my senses. I struck again, but my movements felt sluggish, the weight of the bat heavy in my hands. I was fighting not just for survival, but for the safety of my family. Lisa lunged at one of the attackers, her knife flashing in the dim light. She drove it into his side, and he fell back, gasping in shock. I felt a surge of pride at her bravery, but there was no time to dwell on it. A third attacker charged at me, and I swung the bat again, connecting with his head. He staggered back, but I could see more were coming. We were outnumbered, and fear clawed at my insides. "Fall back!" I shouted, trying to regroup with Lisa and Emma. I could see the panic in Lisa's eyes, and I knew we had to find a way to push them back. Just as it seemed the tide was turning against us, I caught sight of a figure lurking at the edge of the chaos. Another survivor, this one armed with a makeshift weapon, was watching us closely. "Get out," he shouted, trying to rally the others. "We need to take what they have." Panic surged through me. "We can't let them take anything," I yelled, swinging the bat again. But as I turned to face the attackers, I felt a sharp pain in my side. One of the intruders had managed to get too close, and I hadn't seen him coming. I stumbled back, feeling the warmth of blood seeping through my shirt. "John!" Lisa screamed, her eyes wide with horror. I gritted my teeth, fighting through the pain as I swung the bat again, knocking the attacker back. But I could feel my strength waning, and desperation clawed at my insides. "Get Emma to safety!" I shouted, my voice strained. "I'll hold them off." "No. We fight together!" Lisa screamed, determination etched on her face. With renewed resolve, we pushed back against the intruders, fighting for our lives and the safety of our family. I could feel the adrenaline surging through me, the instinct to protect driving me forward. But as the chaos continued, it became clear that we were outnumbered. The attackers pressed forward, and I could see the glint of desperation in their eyes. They were willing to do anything to survive, and I felt the weight of their determination crashing down on us. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we managed to push the last of them out of the house. I slammed the door shut, locking it tight as I leaned against it, panting heavily. The adrenaline began to fade, and the reality of what had happened settled over me like a heavy blanket. "Are you okay?" Lisa asked, her voice shaking as she turned to me. I looked down, realizing with horror that blood was seeping through my shirt. "I'm fine," I lied, though the pain was sharp and growing. Emma stood in the corner, her eyes wide with fear, clutching her stuffed bear. "Daddy, are you hurt?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I'm okay, sweetheart," I assured her, but I could see the worry etched on her young face. "John, you need to sit down," Lisa said, her voice filled with urgency. "You're hurt." I nodded, feeling the exhaustion wash over me as I moved to the couch. Lisa quickly grabbed a first aid kit from the cabinet, her hands shaking as she fumbled with the supplies. "Stay with me, John," she said, her eyes filled with concern. "I need you to focus." Just clean it up," I replied, trying to sound more composed than I felt. As she tended to my wound, I could see the fear in her eyes. "What if they come back?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. "We'll be ready," I said, though doubt gnawed at my insides. "We have to be." The room was filled with silence, the weight of what had just happened settling heavily over us. The chaos of the attack still echoed in my mind, and I could feel the emotional scars beginning to form. Once Lisa finished bandaging my wound, she sat beside me, her expression a mix of relief and fear. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We regroup," I said, my mind racing. "We need to fortify the house even more. We can't let our guard down." But as I looked at my family, I felt the weight of our reality pressing down on us. The world outside was a dangerous place, and we had to find a way to survive. In the days that followed, the emotional toll of the attack began to take hold. The adrenaline that had fueled our fight had faded, replaced by an overwhelming sense of dread. I spent my days reinforcing our defenses, but each creak of the floorboards or rustle of leaves outside sent me into a state of alert. I could see the fear in Lisa's eyes, and Emma clung to her stuffed bear, her innocence slipping away. One evening, as we sat together in the living room, I could feel the tension in the air. "Are we going to be okay, Dad?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. I glanced at Lisa, who was watching me with wide eyes. "Of course, sweetheart," I said, forcing a smile. "We're a team, and we'll get through this together." But even as I spoke, doubt gnawed at my insides. I knew we were living on borrowed time, and the world outside was becoming increasingly dangerous. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom. The sounds of chaos outside echoed through my mind, and I wondered how much longer we could hold on. The fear of the unknown loomed over us like a dark cloud, and I felt the weight of my responsibilities pressing down on me. I turned to Lisa, who was already asleep, her brow furrowed in worry. I wanted to reach out and comfort her, to assure her that everything would be okay, but the truth was, I didn't know if it would be. As the days turned into a blur of fear and uncertainty, I realized that our family bond was our greatest strength. Together, we faced the unknown, navigating the dangers of a world that had become unrecognizable. And as long as we stood together, I knew we could weather any storm that came our way. The struggle was far from over, but we would face it together, united against the chaos that threatened to consume us. The days felt heavier after the attack, the air thick with unspoken fears and uncertainties. But one evening, as we gathered around the radio, hoping for news, the familiar crackle broke through the static, and an urgent voice filled the room. Attention, all survivors. We have breaking news regarding a potential cure for the infection that has ravaged our communities. Medical teams have developed a treatment that shows promise in reversing the effects of the virus. My heart raced as I exchanged glances with Lisa and Emma. The words hung in the air like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. Is it real? Lisa whispered, her eyes wide with hope. Can it really work? The announcer continued, detailing a trial that was set to begin in a nearby city. We urge all healthy individuals to consider volunteering for testing. This could be our chance to reclaim our lives. I could see the flicker of hope in Lisa's eyes, and I felt a surge of determination. This could change everything, I said, my voice steady. If there's a cure, we need to find it. Emma looked up at me, her small face filled with curiosity. What does that mean, Dad? Will we be safe again? Yes, sweetheart, I replied, kneeling beside her. If we can find the cure, it means we can go back to how things were. We can play in the park again, go to school, everything. Lisa's expression shifted, a mix of excitement and fear. But it's dangerous out there, John. What if we run into trouble? What if the gangs? We can't let fear hold us back, I interrupted, feeling a sense of urgency. This might be our only chance. We owe it to ourselves to try. As the days passed, the hope of a cure infused new life into our family dynamic. Lisa began to take on a more active role, helping me plan our next steps. We spent hours discussing the logistics of a supply run, mapping out the safest routes and gathering the necessary supplies. Okay, what do we need? Lisa asked one morning, her voice filled with determination. I laid out a list on the table, my heart racing with the possibilities. We need food, water, medical supplies, and anything we can find that might help us on this journey. And we have to be careful. Emma chimed in, her eyes bright. Can I help? I want to be brave like you, Dad. Absolutely, I said, ruffling her hair. You can help us pack everything up. As we worked together, I could see the spark of hope igniting within Lisa and Emma. The fear that had once clung to us like a shadow began to lift, replaced by a sense of purpose. We were a team, and together we would face whatever challenges lay ahead. Have you thought about what we'll do if we find the cure? Lisa asked one evening as we sorted through supplies. What if it works? Then we'll spread the word, I replied, a sense of resolve filling me. We'll help others. We can't let this continue. Emma, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. Can we help other kids, too? Of course, I said, my heart swelling with pride at her compassion. We'll do everything we can to make sure everyone is safe. The unity within our family grew stronger with each passing day. We shared stories, laughter, and moments of joy, reminding each other of what we were fighting for. The bond we had forged through adversity became our greatest weapon against the darkness that threatened to consume us. As the day of our planned supply run approached, I felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on my shoulders. I needed to keep my family safe, but I also knew that venturing out into the unknown was fraught with danger. "Are you sure about this?" Lisa asked as we finalized our plans. "What if we run into trouble? What if we can't get back?" I took a deep breath, trying to quell the anxiety that churned in my stomach. "I know it's risky, but we can't let fear dictate our lives. We have to take a chance if we want to find the cure." Emma looked up at us, her eyes filled with determination. "I want to go, too. I can help." "All right," I said, a smile breaking through my apprehension. "But we have to stick together, and you have to promise to stay close to me." We spent the night preparing, gathering supplies and packing our backpacks. I made sure we had plenty of food, water, and first aid supplies, as well as makeshift weapons for protection. "Remember, we stay alert, and we move quickly," I instructed, my voice steady. "If we hear anything unusual, we find a safe place to hide." As we prepared to leave the next morning, I could see the mix of excitement and fear in Lisa's eyes. "We're doing this for Emma," she said, her voice filled with determination. "We have to believe that there's hope." "Exactly," I replied, taking her hand. "We're going to make it through this together." The sun rose slowly, casting a warm glow over our home as we stepped outside. I took a deep breath, the air heavy with anticipation. The familiar sights of our neighborhood felt different now, charged with a sense of urgency. As we moved cautiously down the street, I kept my senses sharp, scanning for any signs of danger. The world outside was eerily quiet, but I knew that could change in an instant. "Stay close," I whispered, glancing back at Lisa and Emma. They were right behind me, their faces a mix of determination and apprehension. We navigated the desolate streets, dodging debris and abandoned vehicles. The once bustling neighborhood now felt like a ghost town, a haunting reminder of the chaos that had unfolded. As we approached the grocery store, I felt a knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach. The entrance loomed ahead, partially blocked by debris. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. "All right, we stick together," I said, my voice firm. "We'll get what we need and get out." We slipped inside, the dim light casting eerie shadows across the aisle. I quickly filled my backpack with canned goods and bottled water, my heart racing as I worked efficiently. But the silence was unnerving, and I could feel the tension in the air. Just as I turned to leave, a noise echoed from the back of the store, a low growl that sent chills down my spine. My heart raced as I instinctively turned to Lisa and Emma. "Stay here and be quiet," I whispered, motioning for them to hide behind a nearby shelf. I crept toward the sound, adrenaline surging through my veins. As I approached the back, I saw a figure stumbling toward me, one of the infected. My breath caught in my throat as I realized I wasn't alone. I ducked behind a shelf, holding my breath as I watched the creature approach. Its clothes were torn, and its skin was a sickly shade of gray. The vacant stare of its eyes sent chills down my spine. I had to escape before it noticed me. With every ounce of restraint, I held my breath, waiting for the right moment. Just as it paused, I bolted for the exit, adrenaline surging through me. I sprinted through the aisles, dodging debris and trying to keep my footsteps silent. My heart raced as I reached the door, the sound of shuffling footsteps echoing behind me. I burst outside, slamming the door behind me, the fresh air hitting me like a wave. But I couldn't let my guard down. I glanced back, and my heart dropped as I saw the figure stumbling out of the store, drawn to the sound of my escape. "Go, go, go," I urged myself, sprinting back home as fast as I could. Each footfall felt like thunder, a loud reminder of the danger that lurked behind me. I could hear the creature growling, its footsteps gaining on me. With every ounce of strength I had, I raced toward our house, the familiar sight of our fortified walls giving me a flicker of hope. I reached the front door just in time, slamming it shut and locking it behind me, breathless and trembling. "John!" Lisa exclaimed, her eyes wide with fear. "What happened?" "I saw one," I panted, trying to catch my breath. "It was right there." Emma peered around the corner, her small face pale. "Are you okay, Daddy?" "I'm fine," I assured her, though the tremor in my voice betrayed my fear. "But we need to be careful. They're getting closer." After the harrowing supply run, we regrouped in the living room, the weight of what had just happened settling heavily over us. The hope of the cure felt fragile, like a delicate flower in a storm. "We have to talk about what we just saw," I said. My voice steady but firm. "We can't let fear dictate our actions. We need to find that cure." Lisa nodded, her expression serious. "But we have to be smart about it. We can't rush in without a plan." I took a deep breath, trying to quell the anxiety that churned in my stomach. "We'll go back tomorrow. We'll be prepared." Emma, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. "Can I help?" "Of course, sweetheart," I said, a smile breaking through my apprehension. "You can help us pack everything up." As we worked together, I could see the spark of hope igniting within Lisa and Emma. The fear that had once clung to us like a shadow began to lift, replaced by a sense of purpose. That night, as we settled into bed, I held Lisa close, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on us. "We're going to get through this," I whispered, trying to reassure both of us. In the darkness, I heard Emma's soft voice. "Will we really be safe again, Dad?" "Yes, sweetheart," I promised, my heart swelling with determination. "We're going to find the cure, and we're going to make everything right again." As I closed my eyes, I felt a renewed sense of hope wash over me. We had faced the darkness together, and I knew that as long as we stood united, we could overcome any challenge that lay ahead. The struggle was far from over, but we would face it together, fighting for our future and the life we once knew. The sun hung low in the sky as we prepared for our supply run, the weight of our mission hanging heavily on our shoulders. We had gathered our supplies and fortified our resolve, knowing that this trip could be the turning point in our fight for survival. As we stepped outside, the air felt electric with anticipation. "Remember, stay close," I instructed, looking at Lisa and Emma. "We move quickly and quietly. If we see trouble, we retreat." Emma nodded, her small hand gripping her stuffed bear tightly. Lisa shot me a worried glance, but I could see the determination in her eyes. We were in this together. As we approached the grocery store, the familiar sight of abandoned cars and overgrown grass intensified my anxiety. The world outside had become unrecognizable, and I felt my heart racing as we neared the entrance. "Let's stick to the plan," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. In and out. We slipped inside, the air thick with a musty smell. The shelves were still mostly bare, but I quickly filled my backpack with supplies, moving efficiently through the aisles. I could feel the tension building, every creak of the floorboards echoing in my ears. Then, from the back of the store, I heard the unmistakable sound of growling mixed with shouts. My heart dropped. "We're not alone," I whispered urgently. "We need to hide," Lisa said, her voice tense. Before I could respond, the door burst open, and a group of armed survivors stormed in, their faces twisted with desperation and rage. "Get what you can. We need supplies," one of them shouted. My mind raced. We were caught between the infected and violent survivors. I glanced at Lisa and Emma, their expressions filled with fear. "We need to find a way out," I said, my voice low but urgent. The chaos erupted as the survivors began to clash with the infected, the sounds of gunfire and growls filling the air. I turned to Lisa. "We need to move, now." We dodged behind a shelf, adrenaline surging through me as I tried to assess the situation. The store had become a battleground. And our chance of escape was growing slimmer by the second. "John." Emma whimpered, her small voice breaking my concentration. "Shh, it's okay," I whispered, crouching down to her level. "We're going to be all right. We just need to stick together." The sounds of fighting grew louder, and I could see shadows moving in the chaos. "We need to make a run for the exit," I said, my heart pounding. "On my count, we go." "Got it," Lisa replied, her eyes filled with determination. 1, 2, 3. We bolted toward the exit, dodging debris and the chaos erupting around us. I could hear the growls of the infected mixed with the shouts of the survivors. It was a cacophony of terror. Just as we reached the door, a figure lunged at us from the shadows. I swung the bat, connecting hard and sending the attacker sprawling. But it was a momentary victory. More figures were emerging, both infected and desperate survivors, and I could feel the panic rising. "Keep going," I yelled, pushing Lisa and Emma ahead of me. I had to protect them, no matter what. The exit was just a few steps away, but it felt like a lifetime. I could see the sunlight streaming through the doorway, a beacon of hope in the chaos. But just as we reached it, a group of survivors blocked our path, their faces twisted with desperation. "Get back," one of them shouted, brandishing a weapon. "We need those supplies. We can't let them have anything." I shouted back, gripping the bat tightly. The tension in the air was palpable as we faced off. I could see fear in Lisa's eyes, and I knew we had to act fast. "We're not here to fight," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We just want to get out." But they weren't listening. The group surged forward, and instinct kicked in. I swung the bat again, knocking one of the attackers back. But they were relentless, pushing forward with desperation. "John!" Lisa screamed, fear lacing her voice. I turned just in time to see an infected figure lurching toward us, drawn by the noise. "Behind me!" I shouted, positioning myself between my family and the creature. I swung the bat, connecting with the infected's head, but there were too many. The chaos swirled around us, the sounds of fighting echoing in my ears. I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on me, and I fought to keep my focus. "Stay close," I yelled, my voice rising above the chaos. "We need to find a way through." We pushed through the throng, dodging blows and trying to keep our footing. The sound of gunfire rang out, and I could see flashes of light as the survivors fought against the infected. It was a desperate battle for survival, and I was determined to protect my family at all costs. Just as it seemed we might escape, I felt a sharp pain in my side. One of the survivors had managed to get too close, and I stumbled back, gasping for breath. "No!" I shouted, panic surging through me as I felt the warmth of blood seeping through my shirt. "John!" Lisa screamed, her eyes wide with fear. "Keep going!" I shouted, trying to push through the pain. I'll hold them off. But even as I said the words, I knew the truth. I was losing strength, and the weight of the situation was becoming too much to bear. The chaos continued to swirl around us, and I felt the walls closing in. Just then, Emma's small voice broke through the chaos. "Daddy, please don't leave us." Her words pierced through the fog of fear, and I felt a surge of determination. "I'm right here," I shouted, forcing myself to stand tall. "We're going to get out of this together." With renewed resolve, I pushed forward, swinging the bat and fighting against the tide of attackers. We were a unit, and together we could overcome anything. As we fought our way through, I could see a glimmer of hope ahead. The exit was just within reach. But just as we reached it, the group of survivors surged forward again, blocking our path. "Get back!" I shouted, swinging the bat with everything I had. But they were too many, and I could feel myself being overwhelmed. In that moment, I realized I had to make a choice. We could either fight to the bitter end or find a way to escape. I turned to Lisa and Emma, determination etched on my face. "We're leaving now." Just as I pushed through the crowd, I felt a hand grab my shoulder, spinning me around. I swung the bat again, but the attacker was too quick, and I felt myself being pulled backward. "Let go!" I shouted, adrenaline surging through me as I struggled against their grip. But then, out of nowhere, Lisa lunged forward, her knife glinting in the dim light. She drove it into the attacker's side, and he released me, stumbling back in shock. "Go," she shouted, urgency in her voice. We dashed toward the exit, fear propelling us forward. I could hear the sounds of chaos behind us, but we didn't look back. We burst through the door and into the sunlight, the fresh air hitting us like a wave. We stumbled into the open air, gasping for breath as the chaos of the grocery store faded behind us. But as I looked down, I realized the gravity of our situation. Blood seeped through my shirt, and I felt the pain intensify. "John!" Lisa exclaimed, panic in her eyes as she took my arm, guiding me to a nearby tree for support. "You're hurt." "I'm fine," I lied, but the pain was sharp and growing. "We need to keep moving." As we caught our breath, I could see the fear in Emma's eyes. "Daddy, are you okay?" she asked, her small voice trembling. I knelt beside her, forcing a smile despite the pain. "I'm okay, sweetheart. We're safe now." But deep down, I knew the truth. The attack had taken its toll, and the emotional scars would linger. Our fight for survival was far from over, and I could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on me. "We need to get back home," Lisa said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "We need to regroup and assess our situation." I nodded, feeling the urgency of her words. We had to find safety again, to protect our family from the horrors that lay outside. Together, we turned back toward our home, the familiar sight of our fortified walls bringing a flicker of hope. As we approached our house, I could see the light illuminating the windows, a beacon of safety amid the chaos. But as I stepped inside, the reality of what we had just faced hit me like a tidal wave. We were battered but united, and the bond we had forged through adversity had grown stronger. I glanced at Lisa and Emma, their worried expressions reminding me of the stakes we faced. "John," Lisa said softly, her eyes filled with concern. "We need to talk about what happened." "I know," I replied, my voice steady. "But first, let's clean up and tend to our wounds. We'll regroup and figure this out together." As we worked to patch up our injuries and reinforce our home, the radio crackled to life again. Attention, citizens. The potential cure is still being tested. We encourage healthy individuals to consider volunteering. I felt a surge of hope. We have to consider this, I said, turning to Lisa. This could be our chance to reclaim our lives. Lisa nodded, determination flickering in her eyes. We'll do whatever it takes. As I looked at my family, I realized that survival was more than just physical. It was about love, resilience, and hope. Together, we had faced the darkness, and together we would emerge into the light. In that moment, I knew we were ready to fight for our future, to embrace the possibility of a new beginning. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but as long as we stood together, I believed we could overcome anything. With renewed determination, I took a deep breath, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The journey was far from over, but we were united in our fight for survival and the hope of a brighter tomorrow.